Hey guys, how you doing? It's Mick Tilley for World Martial Arts Television. Got a bit of a show for you today, and for you martial artists, apologies, spoiler alert, might make you think a little bit about what you actually are doing at the moment. We're chatting today to two gentlemen from the PolArm Academy, Mr. Chris Chandler and Michael, and we're going to come straight out of the gate. First of all, explain what the PolArm Academy does, and then more importantly, because in this age of everybody knowing everything about martial arts, you only need UFC, bro, to protect yourself. What are you able to provide?
Well, PolArm was formed in 2005 when I was a police trainer with London Underground, working for British Transport Police. And basically, the reaction gap didn't exist. The police manual British Transport Police were using was a Metropolitan. Well, on the Underground, you haven't got reactionary gap. You're, because of the noise and also the electricity, if you fall on the line, we had to change the manual. And of course, trying to change something in the police doesn't happen that easy. So we designed PolArm, Police and Armed Forces, to cover us legally and medically if we use the techniques we were using.
Well, straight away, you've piqued my interest immediately, because the legally and medically thing is something that gets overlooked all the time, because martial arts is always the same thing, which is like, yeah, just finish it. And you go, right, so you want to be in jail? What are you actually doing here? The guy was only trying to mug you, you know. And then obviously the medical thing as well. So the legal and the medical ramifications, that's already got me going. It got me thinking immediately. So why have you approached it? Because 9 times out of 10, there isn't the yin to the yang in anything to do with conflict management.
Sometimes you can't manage conflict. Fact of life. If the guy's been drinking or the girl's been drinking, it escalates immediately. And the problem with what we were teaching was there was no place you could get away from it, because we were on the Underground, and we were losing cases in court because we were using what they call excess force. And of course, if any theory and all the other things that come into place when you're teaching or training or actually using the skills on the street. And also nowadays, it was all right in 2005 when we formed PolArm, but later on, you've got cameras, you've got mobile phones. As soon as somebody sees something, and of course it comes back and bites you later, because if you're using Cooper's color code, i.e. you're going into red, where you're defending yourself, of course, your skill level deteriorates because you're concentrating on somebody else and you're not realizing what you're saying.
Well,
actually what you're
this
doing.
is the thing, because we used to do, don't judge me, but in a previous life, we used to do a lot of conflict management training back in the days, training with Jeff Thompson, and do it first. You've just mentioned the reality-based movement and everything. And it used to be amazing, because back in those days, it was like the Wild West. You know, you could do the preemptive strike, which is basically assaulting somebody. You didn't have to worry about legal ramifications. And you certainly didn't have to worry about the cameras. Okay, we've been surveilled for a long time and we don't know about that. But the mobile phone, and the problem with the mobile phone is that editing thing that you can do. So you can edit the situation to make you look really, really bad. The profiling aspect, the understanding, because I said this for years, every single confrontation I've ever seen, there was always, for want of a better word, foreplay involved. Yeah, so there was a relationship, and you might not have realized foreplay was involved, but you could see it a mile off. They just carry themselves differently. And no, like guys used to say to me, you can't tell that. And I said, I can tell straight away. And you want to say that it's just some sort of internal thing or intuition. And then you realize afterwards it isn't, because the one thing I've learned about violence is it's a universal language. A guy who's angry in Turkey, who's going to try and knock you out, looks exactly the same as an angry guy in Japan, right? So what sort of research did you do to be able to codify this behavioral part of the training that you offer?
Well, sadly, your people that are watching this and such like do understand body language because of the martial arts. They understand the body moves. But sadly, we had to go to the FBI Academy, our trainers, and be trained very simply on behavioral detection. Now, working in Northern Ireland, Iraq, Afghanistan, the same as Mike, we read body language. We know, as you said, it's not based on language. And you've got to remember that only 7% are words on communication skills. The rest is tone, pitch, and aggression and movement. So people, sadly, are losing that skill on reading it. They're all onto phones, anything, rather than actually watching what's going on. They don't want to be in the space at the moment. And with behavioral detection, which was actually from the FBI Academy, as I said before, they started teaching police. And the difference with the police are they legally have to justify their actions before they even make a movement. We haven't got that as non-warrant carrying people. We haven't got that.
If a civilian's coming to you, Chris, and they're coming for training, if they're a seasoned martial artist, do you have to do the Men in Black thing with the pen and just wipe their memory because all of that nonsense that they've been doing in their pajamas for the last 20 years won't work? Or if you've got a civilian with zero motor skills, and you know this, right? Because if you do martial arts, I have met so many people that I now know had dyspraxia when I first met them. Because these guys walk in, again, I'm using a Men in Black analogy. You know, when the alien comes in and puts on the meat suit for the first time, he eats that hillbilly. And he's like that. And I've got guys walk into class and they go, "Can you teach me how to defend?" And I'm like, "Have you been drinking?" No. I might be able to teach you how to walk. Give me 6 months, I might be able to do that. Get some asymmetry there. But yeah, going back to my question is, martial artists, do you have to wipe their brains? And guys who are just walking off the street, do you have to explain to them that DIMAC doesn't work? And I can't teach you something out the back of an old American comic, which will kill a man in 30 seconds.
With people that have got no martial arts experience, they come on, they still have to have a certain level of fitness. I hate to say this, they do need just basically to get off the mat, to get on the mat and deal with the amount of knowledge that we give them. And we use shock treatment, same as we do with the military. Everybody thinks they can fight. And Mike could tell you that when we join the military, if you're joining the special forces, if you're joining the powers or the Marines, everybody wants to take you out. Guaranteed. It's like green belts in the old martial art world. If you were a black belt and they were green belts, like gunslingers, they were going to take you on because they've got so much, they learn and there's so much credit. And you have to identify these guys immediately. So that's where BD comes into it. And you can ask the class, does anybody want to fight? And all the guys that have been shouting their mouths off all get stared at. And you've highlighted that they're going to be the subject you're going to take out with a lot of martial arts. The difference about military is they're predominantly fitter than most civilians that come in. And they're used to a pain level that most people aren't. I've done 40 years in the military. I got stabbed twice, in fact, 3 times. I got stabbed in the mouth in Kosovo. Now, that should never have happened. All my training didn't kick in because I thought I could control the subject and I was complacent. And that's the danger now with all martial artists, police and everything. They get complacent. They think they can handle it. It's never going to happen. And of course, in the military, we teach you that you're only a 30%er. Now that's, people think they can train and be strong, anything else there. They're over that weight. No way. You don't know what substance that guy's on or girl's on. You don't know if they've been drinking. You don't know what's the most dangerous thing that I've ever dealt with. And it's excited delirium. Excited delirium is really dangerous. This is where you hear the old story of a lady picking up a car off her child. Excited delirium. Now that's where the ethical side comes in. If those people you're working with overseas believe that you're absolutely scum, they feel so incensed, they become really, really powerful, really strong and such like. But when we start training people, whether you're an experienced martial artist or not, we take you right into basics. We throw you in it, and then we explain how you've lost the fight before you even start, by the way you're positioning, how there's key indicators in, body language is coming up, the guy's crossing his arms, he's starting to slowly move, he's starting to edge towards you. People don't see this because the person's talking to them. They don't even hear the change in pitch because they are considering if they can, and the amount of times that you can see people should have walked away from the incident because the person's putting their hands in their pockets. As soon as you can't see their hands, the escalation goes up or walk away.
Yeah, it's so funny you said that, because when I did my NLP, I did NLP practitioner, a master practitioner at courses, and I'll tell you right now, it was nothing to do with combat. It was nothing to do with counselling. It's literally because I own a plastering business, right, and I'm a builder, and there was guys that I just couldn't connect with, and I couldn't understand why I did. And I'm quite an engaging, likable chap. And in business, if you're likable, it's quite easy to get money out of people if you deliver as well. And I couldn't work it out. So I'm chatting away to these guys. And now, if you have a look, I'm profoundly deaf. So I'm not as auditory as I used to be. So I used to be auditory and visual. And the people I couldn't get to grips with. Right? This is ironic for someone who's a grappler. Yeah, they were like, "You never stay in touch. You don't know how I feel." And these are all kinesthetic guys. And I'm like, "We'll stay in touch. Don't worry. I understand how you feel." And then these guys are like, "You understand me?" And I'm like, "No, I understand that actually the brain isn't as complex as we actually think it is. And you're going to tell me everything about you by just the way, it's that 7% thing, right? 7% is the worst. The rest is tonality, pitch, the way it's delivered."
Absolutely.
And you're going, so then I looked at it and I took that to interaction and then violence, right? And it was, you see it coming a mile off. And it literally, like the way you were talking there, I remember the first time I could see it, and it was like Neo, there is no spoon, in the Matrix.
Yeah.
As soon as I saw it, and I went, "No, this is it." And it's always the same. And it was like, it's all of the stuff that's paradoxical. Like, I can't see his hands, therefore he can't hit me. And you're like, can't see his hands because he's got something way worse than hitting me in mind, But if you don't mind, I want to just talk about the military thing for a minute, because a lot of my friends that I do jiu-jitsu with, the army guys, it was mad, because as soon as they were just blue belts, they could hammer you. because with the military, what freaked me out, the first time I ever sparred anyone who was in the military, we weren't sparring. And I didn't know what he was doing. I just knew he was trying to kick the crap out of me. And then I find out he was milling. And I said, "Do you learn any technique?" And he goes, No, there isn't any technique. No technique. And I went, "Why?" And he goes, "No, we give you technique. You might trip up on that." And I was like, "What?" He goes, "No, we'll just see naturally how you move." Yeah. And then the crazy thing was what you were saying about the fitness. The fitness is one thing. But the one thing that I found from martial, especially, I have to keep saying it, it's about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I'm 55 and I'm still able to hammer most young guys for the simple reason that and it's not toughness. I'm resilient. It's a completely different game. If you're resilient, it just means that it still hurts and it sucks. So it's that nisha. What doesn't kill you only makes you stronger. What Friedrich didn't tell us is it still hurts. Years later, it still hurts.
Yeah, but people aren't used to that now.
Oh, they won't embrace it. This is the thing. Hickson Gracie, be comfortable when you're uncomfortable. Easy for you to say, Hickson. You live in Malibu now. You're a millionaire. It's easy for you to say that. It's like most people, because this is what I'm really interested in. And I'm going to be really honest. I've seen over 40 years of martial arts. I've seen everything. Every now and again, you see guys coming in doing military-specific training. We'll use Krav Maga as a great example. So Krav Maga is great if you're just having a bar fight. But then the mentality that, and I don't want to go too woo-woo about this, but a dear friend of mine, he's passed away now, a guy called Marcus Wynn, who was a genius when it came to violence. Marcus Wynn had this whole thing he said where you say, when you access that demon, do you really need to? And how do you deliver on that sliding scale of what is appropriate? Because that, again, you said it earlier on, reasonable force. Now, I'm a very unreasonable man when it comes to somebody breaking into my house at 2:30 in the morning, right? But I'm a very reasonable man if you cut in front of me on the M1 and I've got plenty of time to go somewhere. So how do you get that?
If somebody's breaking in your house, you're going to cope with that because it's black and white. People don't do things black and white. Black and white's easy. I was very fortunate. I could speak more Japanese when I was a child than I could English because I had a speech impediment. I expect you'll find that out now. But I have a speech impediment. And I was put down as a retarded pupil at school. And they had no hope for me at all. My father told me I never joined the military. Never. Because I was too soft. But I started martial arts without my father really knowing. I thought it was judo, but it was Shotokan karate. But in those days, judo was the main thing. And I was too scared of my sensei to find out it was Shotokan karate. Then I joined up, very fortunate, joined the RAF regiment, joined the parachute squadron, went out to Salalah in Oman, first conflict. And then when you weren't going to Salalah, they took you to Hong Kong. When I went to Hong Kong, I was fighting in Kowloon because I enjoyed the martial arts. It predominantly Kung Fu in those days, although they were doing Taekwondo as well. And I took my martial arts out to Hong Kong, and one of the officers said, "Would you like to go to Japan?" Now, I've done selection, I've done commando courses, I've done parachute courses, selection. Nothing was as hard as Japan in the 70s. Nothing was as hard. You were just a target. I was so naive. I was so stupid. I had trouble I was scared to leave the dojo because I'd get lost. It wasn't like it is now. And then I came back to the military and suddenly they thought, oh, he's an expert. I wasn't an expert. No way. I'm still not an expert because you just don't know what is going to happen to the person you're dealing with. That's what you've got to take in all. And what else is going to happen? Who are you going to be judged by? What sort of people are going to judge you? See, that's what you don't realize. If you're in London and you get in a conflict, yes, and where the jury comes from might be that area, and you have what we call in the military psyops, constantly fed information about violence, knife fights, and everything else there. But if you live where I live in Bath, they do have knife incidents now, but not much. You get judged by people at Bath, different type of characters and such like. You've got to take that into consideration. That's really important now, the area that you're dealing with it. Anyway, when I joined up and I went to Japan and I came back and the military thought I was some sort of expert, which I wasn't, we didn't have crown immunity in those days. The crown, and if you wanted to fight and get a few stabbed in training, it happened. Nobody asked anything. I nearly took Princess Margaret out on the demo when I was doing the old knife demo, and the guy came at me with a bayonet. I kicked it, and it landed next to her in the dais when she was watching us.
Wow.
And I was amazed at. Nobody tried to save her. We could see the bayonet flying in the air. And all my team, it was like a dead, they all watched it go. But because I'm an expert, so said, but I wasn't. I've never been an expert in anything. Then I went from the RAF regiment, joined other special forces and such like, and ended up as a sergeant major in Marine Commandos. And the Marine Commandos do a lot of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Why? Why do they do it? It's because nowadays the Royal Marine Commandos become urban combat specialists. And no matter how good you think you are, that weapon, that pistol, that rifle is going to do you no good at all. If there's no justification in dealing with some subject in a house, they're going to start scrapping with you. If you've never done scrapping, it's going to happen. That's why Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is so good. Krav Maga is great if you haven't got bits of kit hanging off you.
Yeah. Well, sorry, carry on.
When I first went to Iraq, if we could justify that they were trying to take our pistol or something like that, we could use deadly force. Second tour, they never got near us. No. They made sure they didn't touch our weapons. They were trying to gouge our eyes out and everything else there. And that's what we bring to the course for experienced martial artists and for new people. We don't care who you are. Everybody learns. And what we do then, we take them into, that's an intro. Sometimes, I must admit, Mick, I do not ask students back. Yeah. I do not ask them back because it's their effort. I've had some guys refuse to do randori. I take it on 2 or 3 people, and they're supposed to be top martial artists. Now, we've got all the padding on. We've got tons of padding. We've got red man suits. We also got fist suits. We put them in the gear. We put them on the head guards. We put them so they don't, and they can really go. But why I do that is to show the endurance of fighting. Sadly, with all the films now, people think they can fight for a long time. I broke the world record for running a marathon with 40 pounds and a rifle on my back. Yeah?
Wow.
And I did it in under 4 hours. Yep. Not a problem. I held the record, and I've done it in America as well. Broke the record in America. How long could I fight for? 6 minutes.
Yeah.
6 minutes. And I'm exhausted. And the problem is, for 6 minutes, you go into black. You're not taking in notice of what you're doing. And of course, once you survive an attack like that, you're hype. And you say stupid things. And you get carried away. And some member of the public records it. And that's what you got to take. You're in a different world now.
It's funny you said that, right? So, first of all, it'd be remiss of us to mention the Royal Marines Commandos and Jiu-Jitsu in the same sentence without mentioning he's an absolute legend. He's a purple belt at the moment. I've interviewed him, Mark Ormrod. You know Rammers? Yeah. So, like, I'm telling you, right? I interviewed him and I said to a few friends of mine, you should see this guy. And he went, he's got one arm. He can't beat you. I'm telling you, Rammers will smash the head clean off you with that one arm. Yeah, trust me, he's unreal. And his toughness is unbelievable. But it was so funny you said this because I've got a friend of mine over in America. He won't mind me mentioning it. He was ex-military. Now he's in the police. A guy called Tim Hanks. And Tim's a great guy. And he just actually won the world's masters at brown belt and then got his black belt on the podium at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And the reason I'm mentioning Tim is in 2008, I was over for an instructor conference. It was Jeet Kune Do and Kali. And I was in Seattle and we were training at the police headquarters. Ran by a guy called Rob Mahoney, who's a killer. And we did a few studies on violence and stuff. And all of this fascinates me. Like the behavior of people. Like, as much as I really like martial arts, it's the behavior of them that really fascinates me, you know, because a front kick's a front kick, but the way that somebody acts and somebody reacts fascinates me. And Tim mentioned about going, see, we talked about Cooper Code, and I was saying to him, you know, I'm a real geek. I'll prove it to you now. Huge fan of Fairbairn and Sykes' work, Rex Applegate, all these old school guys, like unreal. And every single time they did it, they'd write a treatise, and then 10 years later they go, principles are still there, but let's relook. We've got to re-examine what we've done. And I'd never heard of the Cooper Code, and then so I read about that. And then when you just mentioned about going black, and Tim said to me, he goes, "Yeah, your heart rate will go to 160." And I went, "What?" He goes, "Minimum 160, 165, 70." And I went, "What happens after that?" And he goes, "You'll deal with the situation." And then what he did was he said something. And after that, every seminar I ever taught that came back, we talked about violence. I always say, "Do you see these? These get you into trouble. See this? That gets you into jail." And they were like, "What?" And I went, "Yeah, the minute it's finished, say nothing. You'll look guilty. You pay a lawyer in a shiny suit to get you off that, mate. Because what you'll do is you'll try and rationalize what you've just done. If you've got any sort of ethics whatsoever, you'll start questioning, well, maybe I was a bit too over the top there." Well, he admitted he was over the top. And you go, "No, that was just my internal dialogue that came out." And it was like, as you said it, I was like freaking out. So like when you're teaching this, especially like it's the martial arts bit I have to get, because it's a bugbear of mine, as you said. Last night I was sparring at Jiu-Jitsu, 5-minute rounds, went 90 minutes, and everyone's like, "You never sit out on a roll." But I managed the roll. So I know when I have to go, when I don't have to go. Rest, easy, throw them in half guard, keep them in there. As I've said before, without boring you guys, I'll give you one of my favorite gems when it comes to BJJ. Half guard is like an old age people's home in jiu-jitsu. You know you're going to die, and you're going to probably die soon, but you chose to go in there. And the beauty of half guard is you can have a bit of day release every now and again. Every now and again, feel a bit adventurous. I'll walk out into the garden. Oh shit, they're going to beat me up, and go back into half guard where you're safe, right? And the guys are like, but like in a real fight. And I went, in a real fight, it'd be about 35, 40 seconds. And they're like, no way. And I went, goes any longer than that, mate, it'll feel like a lifetime. Because
Absolutely.
it is. And then it's the classic, you know, when again, the reason I'm saying all this is like, you know, you get the seasoned martial artist and he tells you blow by blow. Like it was the Quiet Man fight with John Wayne, you know, where they have a pint halfway through and he can tell you technique. And then I'm like, no, mate, because even now in jiu-jitsu, someone will say, what did you do? And I say, I swept him. Yeah, but how did you sweep him? You'll have to show me, mate, because I can't remember. I was too busy in the moment to do it.
Yeah.
And that's going to lead me on to, we talked about the physical way that you can prepare people, but then I'm hoping that the answer is going to be what I think it's going to be with you. But how do you get the mindset? How do you get them to switch on? And more importantly, how to switch off?
Well, the first thing we do is we take them for basics. We take them for basics. See how they cope with just conflict. Not conflict in the dojo, conflict on the street, where the person moves around them. And there's a thing we call baseline. People don't read baselines. Baseline is the environment you're in. Simple as that. You can also do baseline on drive. We use it in close protection. And we teach our students how to, if you can protect somebody else, you can protect yourself. Baseline is what normally occurs. People don't see when something's changing in the baseline. They don't see that. They feel it, but because of diversity training now, they're scared to actually say it. How many times? I was on the underground when we had a load of football supporters on, travelling on the underground, and a family got on a Millwall train and they still pushed them on because they thought that was their right. They didn't read the baseline, that there was violence. They didn't read it at all. So, you know, you understand that. And the other thing we put the student, even if they've done martial arts, then we train them how to use a pistol, how to use a rifle, and how that comes into the equation, how to work as a team. Because the pressure of when you've got to engage targets and when you have to put the holster your weapon, sling your rifle and deal with somebody without dropping the rifle on them, getting somebody up from the deck when you've got all the military kit on, body armor, helmets, and such like. You take them for the experience and they appreciate then how I won't say easy, but how they can cope easier outside that environment. But the baseline's so important. And you remember the old fight, flight, and freeze? There's a new one on that, Mike. It's called fluffing.
Right.
Yeah. And you see it when people don't want to really deal with you, they will start looking at the ticket or working on their mobile phone because they don't want to be involved. People never happened. This came into about 10 years ago. People never fluffed. They either freeze, flit, or fight. But now they fluff. They will look at their phone when everything in their body is telling you to get out. It's like the old, you know, I've worked a lot of operations, and if you get a camera crew with you from ITI or BBC, that camera thinks it protects them. I was on one job where I won't say too much, but we lost one guy, and the cameraman started filming it. We just lost one of our guys, and it was just like he wasn't going to get hit because he wanted that footage. But people now are using their phone rather than taking in what the environment, the baseline's changing. Get out, run away. So we teach them baselines, we teach them how to deal with it, we tell them fluffing, and also expose them to how unfit they are. And people take that, can take it away, or we have people who've never done it before. We've got one old guy on the course, and he's coming back for every course he can because he loves it. It's so much developmental. Because people do not want to be told now, you're not coming on the next one. They get very incensed. And that's what we do on the course. You can have no training at all. Your environmental changes. And when people leave us, it's changed their lives.
Yeah.
Sadly,
Well, you see,
people
sorry.
don't realize sometimes it's arrogance, absolute arrogance. They think they know it. They think money can save them, such like. I went into a big conference to talk about BD, and it was like a general meeting. This big company came from all over the world and everything else there, and they didn't even acknowledge me in my classroom. So I simply said, I can tell among you who's having an affairs and who's not. It was deadly silence. All the women that knew people were having affairs stared at them. The guys covered up, crossed their legs and crossed as much as they could and looked Stanley in front there. But I gained that. But the baseline changed then. I knew I had them. People do not read this. They do not read the baseline.
But it's as you're saying this again, it's this is why I love interviewing people like you, because it makes me think even more. Because as so the baseline, as you're saying that to me, I'm listening to that and I'm going, that's just literally eye accessing cues in NLP, but with the volume turned up to 11, because it's the whole body now, not that. First time I discovered anything about eye accessing cues, I was like, what? I was like, yeah, as soon as a human's able to talk and you speak their language, you'll be able to do it. And I was like, really? And then it was like, where they construct, where they remember, how they feel. And I was like, wow, you're exactly right. And then it was like all the defensive postures that you were saying, because we used to have a guy. The reason I'm saying it is when you were talking about who's having the affair, went like this and watched. You said earlier about working as a team. And years ago in door work, it was always the same. Group of lads on a night out, you just had to watch them. Group of lads who worked together, 9 times out of 10, you had to watch them. But the beauty of that was, if it ever kicked off, it was always an internal conflict. So it was like they never really went for anyone outside. They would just have a few beers and then bring up something that happened at work. So you used to have to separate them. The worst guys, believe it or not, wasn't because I had it with a couple of guys, football players. So they were like, yeah, football. I said, no. You got to remember, you guys only think you're thugs. The worst guys ever, rugby players, because they've spent their whole, all their free time getting hit and working as a team. And they know each other's strengths and everything. And the reason, when you said it, it made my mind go was, now, a couple of years ago, well, when I say a couple of years ago, Jesus, thinking about it now, probably 18 years ago, I taught on a seminar and Lee Morrison was teaching on it, right? So Lee Morrison does the urban combatives. Like, yeah, I really rate his stuff. When I first met him, I thought he was just a maniac. I honestly, and I was like, this guy's either smoked far too much weed or he's paranoid. Then years later, I found out, well, it wasn't, I just discovered by getting to 55, he wasn't paranoid at all. He was just a visionary. Because I remember him saying, like, when we had the Westminster Bridge attack, so transit van, guys come out, and like literally he had called this play by play to me 10 years previously. And he just said to me, he goes, you're going to get a load of guys. And so you said earlier, if they believe that you're something that you're not, you're like the Antichrist, whatever, jumped out, worked as a team, and you're like, right, they've gaffer taped a machete to their arm. They're not going to come quietly. And they worked as a team. And as soon as I saw it break out on TV, I was like, and shall I tell you something? This is no word of lie. I never taught a seminar on conflict management again after that day. For the simple, because I was like, I can tell a few dirty jokes. I'm great at teaching kids. That's about it. I like embrace what I know I'm pretty good at, But it was like, this leads me on to now, when you were talking about like dealing with multiple hostiles, right? Is that where does that figure into your course? Because you can't bring that out straight away, because there's inoculating people and then there's throwing them in at the deep end, right?
Well, we do basics on the first course. We pressure test people and we explain to them why they made mistakes and such like. We get some brilliant fighters on the course, absolutely brilliant, but they make stupid mistakes. They get overconfident or they get tired. Once they start getting tired, the arms drop and they start making mistakes. And that's worth having that in a safe environment, so we can explain it to them. But there's also they don't see the pre-indicators. Then they forget about the blade because they're tired. They forget how quickly a blade can come out and it can cut them and such like that. And how quickly they go. One thing we do once they get overconfident is we, the blue fist tops.
Yeah.
We put white t-shirts on them.
Yeah.
And then we have them fighting each other. But what we tell them is their bleed out factor. And people are shocked on that. They think they think if they get a slight stab. I did my refresher medics course just before Christmas. And I went to one incident where they had one stab wound. I won't say where it was, but the experienced paramedic I was with, she basically said, "What do you think of that?" And I said, "Well, I said what I do." She goes, "No, you didn't find out how long that blade is. By the time we get him a surgery, that's going to be a massive cut. That's going to be so deep." And I went to see him in the hospital later. I won't say where it was, but he's going to be in that hospital for 2 months now. And it looked to me like just a small stab wound, but it's a long blade. But the guy didn't even see it. Didn't identify the blade.
No.
So we push our students, they're blown their brains. By the time they leave us on the first day, their brains are blown. They're in what we call the affected zone. What they thought would work doesn't work. But the next thing we've got to do is take them to a higher level so they understand us a little bit more. Because they've come on a course with guys that have got a lot of military experience and police, and like Mike, and we have policemen on it that are serving and such like. But our hands aren't tied like they are with the police. Not so much the military, but with the police. When I started teaching British Transport Police, one of the old instructors said to me, "If you give them too hard warm-up, somebody's going to fall over the mat." And I went, "Oh, don't be so silly." And he did. He fell over the mat. And he does it every time he starts training so you could get a few weeks off.
Yeah.
That's not the mentality we're going to. And next day, we take them on to close protection, how they're going to look after somebody else. Because then you're dealing with people from oblique angles. How many times somebody going to grab your child or grab your wife? And we teach them how to deal with that. They don't know they're doing close protection, but we're teaching it. Then the final exercise, we get them to actually get some people out of cars.
Yeah.
That is hard. With all the real estate in the car, somebody's jumped into your car, you've got to get them out. And you still can't, because they're in your car, you cannot use excess force.
Yeah.
So we get them out of the car, how to hold them down. That's a hard thing, controlling them. And justifying why you're controlling them without hurting them. When we were working on dealing with protesters, you can't put a lock on for more than 15 or 30 seconds. Because if they feel that you're really purposely injuring them, they will fight again. So you're going to the psychological side of dealing with people in the cars. And of course, everybody puts their arms around the steering wheel and we go for nerve point. And while they're sitting, of course, you can put nerve points on. But to try it, nerve points don't work. There's only one nerve point that works if you're trying to move somebody standing, because nerve points are predominantly below your waist level. But when somebody's in the car, that's when nerve points can come, because they're concentrating on putting their hands in the steering wheel, not grabbing them. Then you get an arm and you get an elbow lock or a wrist lock, then you take them out. But what do you do when you're taking them out? You say things like, you should be in my bloody car, things like that. You don't know what's going on. The biggest experience I had was London bombings.
Right.
Because people were seeing things they weren't used to. I'd done 30 years military before then. I'd been some really shit holes. But what moved me most was how people were physically getting hold of you. They weren't coming and talking to you because you're in uniform. They were grabbing you.
Yeah.
So it's quite aggressive. And people were dragging you down to the underground where there's bits of people and such like, because they were in shock. And people have to have this camaraderie. Another thing we do on the course is teach you how to look after each other. as you said about when you were a doorman, the camaraderie you have there, people don't get that now. They don't get that. And you might fail our course if you don't look after your partner.
Well, that you see, this is the thing, right? So we're getting into what I'm really interested in, because the psyche and the emotional makeup is what makes you. I really believe that. Absolutely. Right? Because here's a quick example, right? So my main instructor, Danny Santo, this guy is an amazing human being. He's genius. Like, you know, the guy's he's a legend. And we always say, tell me a fight story about it. There is no fight story about it. Like, what is he? He's brought loads of people together. He's taught them, well, he taught me how to be a better man for definite. And he was explaining to me once about basic training, like in regards to Kali, because and it was the you know, the poacher term gamekeeper thing. Second World War, right? They've got to go over to the Philippines. So what do they say? In the web, well, what you're gonna meet a bolo knife, right? Okay, how long? It's going to be about 18 inches long. And what they're going to do? Well, it's going to hit you with an angle 1, and we'll call it an angle 2. Why? Because guess what? There's cause and there's effect. For every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then it was like, so what about any cool stuff? You went, no, it'll be this, it'll be this. And if you get inside of the arc, then you got to go. If you're outside of the arc, you're only going to be inside of the arc at some point. And the minute he said that, I was like, so that it's just simplified everything. And I was like, yeah, but how do you get the mindset? He goes, now you have to drill. And I was like, what? He goes, now you have to drill. And you said something there earlier, which again fired off something up in here with me, where you were talking about, first of all, the fellowship, which, you know, I know it sounds really lame, but it's why army buddies meet each other 60 years later, because they've had a shared experience, they've been through something massive, and then guess what? Everyone you meet after that, you might be a nice enough guy, but guess what? You're a bit of a pussy, really. You know what I mean? And as a bloke, I don't want the 3 guys beside me when we're really in it to have to question them, right? And that's the thing that's got me about speaking to you. You know, I don't know if you know this, but you do realize that you're delivering a personal development course. You're not really teaching martial arts or dealing with violence. You're dealing with just how to make someone believe that they're tough. But you've got to back that up with doing tough shit, right? Does that make sense to you? Absolutely. Or is that what you were looking for?
No, that's why we push them. Right. We're just to complete in July a 3-3 course. These students have come back 4 times.
Right.
They're going into a killing house. And they're going to get shooting targets live. They're going to be fighting against red man suits. Now, they use the simunition red man suits, so if they do hit them, they're going to feel it and such like. But the thing I'm after is, do they look after each other? Because you've got to have that sort of trust in each other. And I never thought it'd happen. Coming from the military, I never thought it happened. I knew it happened in the police because specialist units are conditioned, the same as you're talking about. But you can do it, and it's proved that we can do it. The other thing about it, you've got guys from the Special Boat Service, you've got guys from the Marines, you've got young soldiers that are NCOs teaching at the moment, urban combat. But for the old guys to rub shoulders and to see that we do have this development in this country, that there are good people, because all you're going to get is negativity, that the youth can't do this. People are scared of doing that. They're not. I've got 5 trainers coming up that have, only one of them had done military service before. There is that backbone still in us. Nobody wants to say it, but that backbone's still in us.
Well, you see that. Sorry, I was just sorry to interrupt, but yeah, you just hit on something. It's like, and bear in mind, I'm going to use the term toxic masculinity, but some of the toughest people I know are women, right? Yeah. So I'm truly of this belief that we should all walk like warriors, right? Now, I've heard this term a few times, right? And First time I heard it, it sounded a bit Waltish to me when I heard it. You know, the tier 1 civilian. Yeah, where you go, yeah, you want to be a tier 1 civilian. And once I got over the initial giggling about it, I thought, shit, no, you should be a tier 1 civilian. Because I have to admit, I come out with this quite a lot. I always say to guys, especially when I'm teaching Carly, because teach Carly, they go, just show me the cool stuff. And I'm like, no, you need Thai boxing, you need boxing, you need BJJ, you need wrestling, and then we'll do the cool stuff at the end. And I said, because I'll tell you right now, guys, if it kicks off, I ain't going to be one of those innocent bystanders that gets taken out. And they're like, you believe that, Mick? And I'm like, no, trust me, I believe that. And and that's only because I've kept at it over the years. That's the one. That's the old, as you said about the old Japanese mindset. The Japanese were on the ball with this.
They were
all wear the same uniform.
Yeah.
No, none of you. There's
Discipline.
no individuals here. Discipline. Walk on the mat. You're all part of a team. And then what? I'm going to break you down and I'm going to rebuild you bit by bit. But people don't want to get broken down now. And have you found?
Mick, they do.
Really?
They do. If you do it properly, they do. Leadership is still there. If they know you're caring for them. Now, I had a guy on it. He was a thug. Now, I'm an old man, and I took him out, and he hit the deck. And he said to me he had a weaker moment. Suddenly, he thought it was the hardest guy going. But we've fought for years. Absolutely. You know, I didn't get this ugly naturally. This is why people, but this is why people come to our course. I mean, if you're willing to carry on, like I'm even arranging at the moment for when they've completed the 3-3 course to go to the military and teach them fast rope and abseiling in the military. You're going into a different world. And everybody goes, oh no, civilians, they can't do this. They can. They've proved to me they can. And they have the camaraderie. We don't arrange it, but the guys go out and invite us there for the night. And it's just like, for the old vets, there's faith.
Yeah.
And you're not allowed to be, I just find it crazy. You know, I joined up and I served all these countries and I trained other people in other countries, like Malaysia, Kosovo, you name it, Middle East, Far East. And it's the same, we're humans. And this camaraderie is what we're trying to build in.
Well, it's funny you're saying this because, like, I'm 55 now and I'm just getting to that jaded part where I'm getting to it, but every now and again I'll believe, you know, oh, the youth of today, yada, yada, yada. And then you don't realise that in ancient Rome, there was graffiti. Like, I don't know if you ever heard it. It was like, the problem with today's society is that children don't listen to their parents anymore, and that was graffiti in ancient Rome on the wall. So it's not a new phenomenon, right? But it was I would like your take on this. I've found that because we are very tribal, right? So we're a tribal species, and that Dunbar effect thing. That there's a reason why nationalism works. Because that Dunbar number actually is a thing. That's why guys will support Man United and Man City and fight each other. Because we've got 1,200 to 1,500 people up here that I can identify with, and then it expands out. The bigger the idea comes, right? But the reason I'm saying it is, with the advent of like social media is probably I've quoted some really random movies, so I might as well quote this one. Con Air, Nicolas Cage, Stanley Goodspeed. What do you know about that gas? I know it's something we shouldn't invent. That's social media. That's the one, right? Social media is something we need to uninvent because it's made us more insular. It's made us more. It was like you were saying when you talked about the fluffing. It was really funny. Because they're there and they go, right, so you're in a really dangerous situation. And why are you looking at your phone? Why are you examining your ticket? Is it because you think your world is so important that everything outside of it doesn't exist?
Absolutely.
Or are you deflecting away from this and just saying, look, I'm a bit of a victim here, mate. please don't beat me up. And guess what? As I've said time and time again, guys, how many diplomats do you know? How many guys in the military do you know? We know a lot more in the military. Do you know why? Because diplomacy doesn't really work. We pretend it works because some part of us wants to believe that we are noble savages, yada, 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 but we're not really. And I think that's, this is my final real question to you is, in the way that everything has changed in regard to violence one-on-one, my mentality, there's no getting out of it, that you are going to meet right now. I can't believe I'm quoting this guy, Harry Ellis from Die Hard. Do you remember the coke snorting lawyer? Where he goes, I don't know what your problem is, Hans. Maybe you're pissed off with the Hebes. Maybe it's the IRA. I don't know. But the reason I'm saying that is you've got now groups who are hell bent on destruction of wherever you are. And like in the military, you understand it because you're going there for a reason. But now it's come here and the battlefield's changed. How do you see? Because like this is the thing, right? I was looking at your website. I was looking at how innovative you were and you are, right? And it's like, so how do you change it? Because the world's changing even more dramatically now. So how do you bring that? Because this has got to be another course.
No, Mick. What you got to realise is I'm not a bright man. I'm not bright. I don't know. No, far from it. I've got a Sidcup County Secretary Modern School certificate saying I'm retarded. Yeah.
Well, but Chris, what you got to remember, most of the really smart people I've ever met, and guess what? Modesty precludes me from saying I am one of the smartest. I actually am. But whenever anyone asks me, I always say, but you're a plasterer. How do you know about philosophy? How do you know about this? And I went, I'd rather that you were surprised than underwhelmed when you met me. So, Chris, don't kid a kidder and try and don't tell another borderline autistic genius that they're not a borderline autistic genius, because that's what I am. I know that much. So anyway, I
was very privileged to go on a PSYOPS, psychological warfare course. I was the only one officer on it. It's predominantly officers do it. I had real problem on it because they're talking about basically really clever stuff. But I got the psyche of it. And then when I deployed, I realized then just how we and the enemy use the media. We were trying to find out if the Serbians had been trained by the Russians. And we found it out because we ran a competition on music TV in Kosovo. And some of the kids told us what they're looking at. We showed photographs of different things. And then we knew that there was a Russian family there that was training them up. So I know how much. We go right back to, years ago, psychological warfare. And the trouble with the media now, they're trying to teach us that there's no structure. People give up anything. There's no religion. And such like. Well, most of my conflicts I've fought is because of religion.
Yeah. This is the thing. We live in a godless world. I don't know. There seems to be about 4 billion at the moment on either side that seem pretty they seem pretty motivated by it. Let's just say it's just funny, right? As you said that, because I can't wind it up on this. When you were talking about the propaganda and the psyops, right? So Goebbels was the man who first did it, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, but Goebbels was probably the first guy that was able to get the reach out there. It was being done by everybody, if we want to talk about a real psyop, how about the Battle of Thermopylae? Yeah. So 300 held them back. Yeah. How many people told that story? Yeah. And then it was like, and how were you so strong? Because guess what? We made sure that the phalanx never collapsed. Why not? Well, you were born a Spartan, but you got spina bifida, you've seen it in the movie, can't have you in. Why? Because you're not strong enough to be in it. Yeah, but I'm a good guy. Yeah, but you're not strong enough to be in it, right? And that's what it's like. As you were saying it, because I was thinking to myself, no, we're going to have to look towards the future. you know, to deal with what's coming next, right? But we don't, because there's nothing new under the sun, as Bruce Lee would say, because it's just cranked up a little bit. And the other one as well is, do you see this? This is delivering it to us every single day.
Absolutely.
Like it's funny you said it, because it was like I said to my wife, I said, we're going to have a general election soon, mate, very soon. And she went, how do you know? She said, how do you know? I said, well, Rishi Sunak's now telling me how dangerous the world is to live in. And last week he was telling me how great it was. And she went, why? And I went, he's worried about having to change his mailing address. And it was that whole thing, you know. And then she said, you sound like a serial killer. And I was like, no, it's actually, you know, that's what they usually do. Sow dissent.
But this comes into the fighting, Mark. This comes into the fighting. Even in conflict, everything you do, body language is really vital. If you're confident, like when you said about somebody coming into your home, you've got confidence to deal with that guy because he's broken that seal. But it's when they don't break the seal. It's in between the grey, what we call grey. In the military, we call it grey. Not black is not white, it's grey. That's when it's really dangerous.
Yeah.
And if you read it wrong, you're going to end up in prison. People don't realise how many people end up in prison. They don't.
But you see, this is the funny thing. It's like you said it, and because all of us here are men of the world. It's years ago you used to hear that cliche about, you know, prisons full of everybody in jail was innocent. No. You're like, not everyone, but unfortunately, there's a lot of victims of circumstance in there. Went in there, did more than they should have done, because again, especially in this country, this reasonable force thing, and it hasn't changed in the last 20 years, because it was like, so just use a reasonable force, and the media, it's like, well, I was in fear of my life, and that's what but you have to sell that. You have to make sure.
It's how people view it.
Perception is, again, this is
and how you get judged by it, which area you're in. And don't forget, the people you're being judged by haven't experienced like your clients, your people watching this. They haven't got that experience. They don't know that. You're judged by people that are very soft.
But you know, and we will bow out on this one. It's that classic line when you meet someone who's never actually really seen violence, right? So years ago, it used to be my big bugbear I used to have. Me and Jeff had this discussion many times when Jeff says, no, you got to teach these people how to act it. And I went, unfortunately, Jeff, you're talking to a guy who was beaten up and abused all through his childhood. So I speak violence, and I understand not just that as a language, but I understand every single dialect. So Geordie to Scotland, right down south, I understand it all. And the minute I see it, I know if the guy can do it or not. And you're getting people, and like when I said it to him, he didn't like it. And then he turned around and he went, you're actually right. I said, you're getting these guys to speak Spanish like Manuel from Fawlty Towers. And I said, if you don't know anything about Spanish, it could be plausible. But, you know, sorry, mate, you're talking to me. I know Spanish. And it's that whole thing. You can always tell someone who's never really seen violence, because the first time they actually see it, and immediately, that was far too much. I don't know why he did that.
Oh, no.
Going, maybe the third kick to the head was a bit overkill. But unfortunately, the guy had knocked out 2 people beforehand. And, you know, and that's the thing, because it's like you're saying about perception. And again, it's like who you're speaking to. It goes all the way back to what I said earlier about arguing with people online. Yeah. If you understand it, then yeah, I can see why you 2 guys are arguing. But the passerby walks past, and it's when do they see it? At what point did they enter the altercation? Did they miss the foreplay? You know, this is for Mike, 'cause he's a young guy. He'll get this when he'll like this. You know, did they miss? You know, the guy slipping into the DMs. You know what I'm saying, young man, right? So it's that whole bit. It's like before you even started talking, did you see that? And that's the violence, and it never changes.
Now the other thing is, I was an expert witness on lots of cases. Yeah, police. What you got to realise, when you watch a video, if you watch it again and again, you get micro sounds. I was watching one incident where one guy was basically in his own home attacked in the back garden, And the jury thought he was justifiable, everything he did, proportionate, necessary, and all that, ethical. By the time they watched the video over and over the 7th time, they started hearing things like the guy that was attacking the person goes, "I don't really want to fight you." That never came out until the 7th time they saw it.
Mm.
So you've got to remember that heat at the moment, Cooper's colour code, that's no good when people are analysing it. And that's what we teach on the course. We teach that you've got to justify your actions, you've got to do everything the law says, but you've also got to look and sound confident when you're talking to the police after it. You've got to know, we've had 2 barristers on the course that reckon it's some of the best training they've ever done. And the way we explain it, we're not bright people, but we have to. I've been done for manslaughter in the military.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'll tell you one thing, the incident happened, I was a bodyguard, and I actually thought I hadn't seen the pistol drawn by the end of the day.
But you'd second guessed yourself.
I started thinking I was guilty. Perhaps I hadn't seen it.
Wow.
And you've got to understand that. And then when you explain to people what it's all about, nothing's like the films. Nothing's like the films. You start having self-doubt. Even with the experience, I'd been in 30 years. I was a sergeant major. And I got done.
Yeah, but you see, again, that's human nature. Because you got to remember, this is the thing. And this will make me sound really cliche, but I truly believe that inherently, none of us are really bad. Like, yeah, again, Daniel Santo came out with a great line once. He said he's never met anyone bad. He's just never met them where they've cultivated to being good yet. And like, I'm like, yeah, when he said that, it blew my mind. And I was going, if only I could see the world like you, Guru. And he says, you don't look at the world like that. And I went, no, it's I don't have that. So this will be the final thing that I'm going to ask you. And I feel like I've said the final thing about 8 times. But, you know, I don't know if you've ever been to Vegas, but when Sinatra was there, he'd go off, come back, go off, come back. You know what it's
I've
like?
never been to Vegas.
Oh, don't go. It's like Blackpool with sand. It's honestly, it's like Blackpool, Magaluf, and Vegas. I have this theory that you can literally stay there for 72 hours, and then guess what? You'd go full feral. You know, it's like, it is bad. It's like middle-aged people getting drunk on slush puppies in the middle of the day. It's like, honestly, it's like going to Dudley Zoo, but where they're wearing clothes. It's unreal. I love it. And now they've brought mixed martial arts to it. Yeah, truly, it is the end of days, guys. We just need Schwarzenegger to walk in on that movie. No. So what we're going to wrap up on is, first of all, if you can just an outline on how you could combine this as a martial artist and why you'd want to do it. And then lastly, and more importantly, how they can get in contact with you, how to reach out on you. And I know that you've already mentioned that you might not ask people to come back. So obviously I don't want to ruin your business, but explain why certain people, it just won't be for you. Because when you've got a product that's perfect, guess what? Maybe it's not for you, my old mate. We're a Michelin star restaurant here, mate. Yeah, we're not doing Big Macs this week.
Well, the first course, it's 65% close combat. That's it. We do 10% close protection because we want to see if people can look after other people, because that's what you can do with your family. We do non-shooting pistol training to see if they're ambidextrous, if they can take in stuff and they've been fighting. We don't do it cold. We do it when they've got to learn something new. Then we do team training to make sure they can look after each other. Big thing. People putting on body armor and stuff like that can be a nightmare if they don't look after each other. And then we do a little bit about rifles and how to shoot a rifle to see if they can take more training. Now, if they do that and they drop on something like attitude, predominantly attitude, they don't want to get in, don't want to do it. They just want to get the ticket. We call in the military, we call them certificate holders. They
I know a few of them.
Yeah, they want, well, you know that, don't you? They do courses. They don't really want to do it. If we see the development of the person, also, thing that you don't often hear, being humble. We have some great black belts on and we watch them developing at other people. And we learn from other people as well. It's not a course. We pick up on every course from people like yourselves that come on it. Stuff like that. There's a amount of knowledge out there. And we ask them if we can bring that into our course on the next one. And they say yes. But it's that humbleness that they help each other. And that's not, you don't see a lot. You used to, when you and I started in the karate, the dojo was sacred. And you had that humbleness side because you were scared. You were scared of what was going to happen to you.
Be polite to everyone because most of these guys can kick the crap out of you.
Yeah.
And the other ones will stick here. You know, I've said this before. I'm not very good at martial arts, but I'm great at showing up. So I'll still be here. I'm not going to give up.
Now, if a guy or girl comes back and does the 1-3 course again, as we've had students do, their development's incredible. We don't expect them to be good on pistols. We don't expect them to be good on rifles. We don't expect them to be good on close protection. But it's this attitude. That's all it's down to, attitude. And when you find a really good martial artist, and he's good to such degree, he's humble. He knows he's good. Hasn't got to be hard. I had one guy from the military just hurt everybody. He didn't really have the underpinning knowledge how to fight. And we just destroyed him. Because he's so arrogant. But it was a fun. But when you get guys that are real good martial artists, they come on the course, their development is. Next course they do BD. And they learn about how to read body language. They do the whole morning about it. They do 6 hours. How to read it. We show them little games that they can see, where they see people acting differently. They have initial suspicion. That is when you go, well, that's a bit funny there. Then you have elevated, where they do something that's going to affect you physically, or is going to affect them law, where you need to go get a police or something like that. So they go into that. The third time they come back, which is the 3-3 course, they go live. They go live looking after a VIP. We've cleared it with the police. You have a BD team and you have a personal escort section, which are protecting it. And we have an incident where we try to take the VIP out. That's when your skills really, and that's when the camaraderie comes together, where the guys and girls really believe they've got something. But we're developing all the time. We're getting martial artists coming in. We've got Mike coming in with some guys from the army and girls from the army doing more Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. We have other people coming in doing more knife techniques and stuff like that, just to educate the people. So it's a flowing course. Absolutely. Once they complete this final second 3-3 course, then they're a team. And that's why I'm going to take them fast roping and abseiling and things like that. Because they'll be doing everything they've taught. When they come off a rope, there'll be a man in a red man chasing them, fighting them before they get off the rope. Because it's that experience, and people are so scared of having that experience now. Then we deal with the medical side. Not St. John's, not first aid, third aid. How are you going to deal with a sucking chest wound? What happens if your intestines are sticking out? What are you going to do with that? What are you going to do? Try to put them back? No way, you'd be pooping out your ear for the rest of your life. We go into that, and it's real fast. And we do it all the time. On every course, we do first aid, knife wounds, dealing with stuff like that. If you get stabbed in the neck, how are you going to put pressure on it? We go into depths like that. So it's constantly, their heads are spinning by the time they go, but it's proved that it can work. We've got 5 future trainers, but we've got 9 out of the original 12 that are coming back for the third 3-3.
You see, this is the thing, right? A systematic approach is the way forward. And as long as you build the foundation, and it's just like 9 times out of 10, it's just embellishing. You'll notice from the karate days, right? It was like, you know, I'm really going to show what a geek I am, right? So, Hidori Hamigame. And you go, Migi Hamigame. And you go, so you just like left to right stance. Yeah. And then you see these guys and go, so you're doing a front kick. Right. What's next? Step in the front kick. And you're like, what's next? Well, it'll be a jab next. Why? Well, that's how the Japanese would actually fight. Why? Well, they'd find it very, very uncultured to actually punch somebody in the face. And you're like, whoa. And it's that whole thing where it's like, it just as you were saying it's fascinating because you have to keep going. And then you were talking about the development. And this is the bit that I really like, is once you've got the tools, are you keeping them sharp? Yeah, because that's the one, right? And it's like, you know, I get it. I'm just checking, make sure the wife doesn't catch me, right? But when I go into a restaurant, I'm like, can I sit here? I want to sit. I want to face the door. Why do you want to face the door? Just see who's coming in, goes out, right? Then go in, check all the exits, and why? And I was like, zombie apocalypse. I was, who would have thought this, right? During COVID, during COVID, did you think you were going to be baking banana bread and trying to buy loads of toilet roll? I'll tell you something. I didn't realize it was going to be like emptying all the shelves. And I make a joke out of it, where I was going like, I was ready to kill my next door neighbor, right, for a jar of pickles, and I don't even like pickles that much. And she's 92, but like I spoke to a few of my mates, and I was going, "How are you about all this?" "Oh, it's all right. It's nothing." I'm like, "Nah, man. I saw Caesar the monkey. We were just trying to fix Alzheimer's, and we ended up having to bow to a monkey." But yeah,
but how would you feel if you went live with those skills?
Well, in a controlled environment, this is why I go to jiu-jitsu. It's why at 55 I still roll.
Yeah,
because when you're in the moment, it's zen, man. You can't think about anything else. You got to do it, and then it's like, and I know this makes me sound really woo-woo, but when I do it, that reinforces my belief on who I actually am, who I know. Because guess what? And the crack is, you know who you are. Like, this is the thing. It's like everyone thinks they can handle hot water until they've been into hot water. And then obviously you get the odd couple of guys that go, I'm going to jump into hot water all the time now, because that's where you feel truly alive. But that's why we still do martial arts. That's why you do what you do.
And the 30% is really good.
Right.
You never know the mental state of what the person's carrying.
Yeah.
Never. So they walk away from the course just knowing that they're only going to be 30%. Young police officers, once they get into a street fight and they realise the training they've had is not good, do they go back to their personal safety trainers? No. They lay in bed. No, they lay in bed at night thinking, I'm not going to get in that scrap again. I'm shit. That's the difference. On our course, we show you and we push you to the point of where you will fail.
Yeah, Chris, this is the thing, right? I have a load of police officers train with me, and I always say to them, you are so lucky that I'm not some like malevolent like criminal kingpin, because you guys would all be working for me. And they're like, what? And I said, you wouldn't arrest me. I said, you can't arrest me. And like, I wind my wife up all the time. I tell them that I'm a master samurai, that I'm a ronin, right? But I like, when we're training, and we'll bow out on this, right? The guys who train me will know this. I've referenced Mad Movies all night, so I might as well reference the last one. When I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, if I get side control, like I always say, I'm going to make you beg for me to submit you. I'm going to make you, no, you won't, no, you won't. I jump on neon belly, and like Michael knows, neon belly, and then from on the gi, grab the lapels, drive my knee right into their sternum, and then start shouting like, Alonzo from Training Day, King Kong ain't got shit on me. And I do that in the class, and they're like, who's this mad old dude? And I'm like, I always say to them, be polite to every bald, middle-aged fat dude you meet, because guess what? A few of them are me. Not many. Like, in the real world, everyone should be like this. Like I everything you're saying about the course, I'm loving, because
come down on it.
You should walk like a warrior.
Come down.
I'd love to. Like, you want to walk like a warrior, and then go there, and it's like you were saying, sitting. You got these new coppers, they're lying in bed, sticking on My Chemical Romance album, and they're crying their eyes out, going, "Oh, I'm not the person I thought I was." No one came out of the womb like this, mate. You know what I mean? You want to be a badass, become a badass. I've got a 7-year-old kid. I was teaching it. Like, I'll leave you with this. 7-year-old kid today, like, and she's unreal. It helps that her brother's a phenom, right? He's probably one of the best blue belts I've ever seen at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Won the British Open last week, 5 fights, 5 submissions. His 7-year-old sister is madder and scarier than him.
Brilliant.
I was rolling with her, and when I always say, I walk past her, I go, "Tell me, what are you?" And she, "I'm a killer." I said, "What business are you in?" She goes, "I'm in the torture business." And I went, "And how's business this week?" "Business is good, Nick. Business is good." Rolled with her today, swept me, and she tried to ankle lock me. And I'm like that, going, that's the sort of that. But the Kardashian or her, huh?
The problem is, people won't like seeing that, Mike. They won't.
Yeah, but that should be the
They're
norm.
saying you're conditioning your children and everything, because that's the world we live in. Until the crunch comes.
This is the thing, right? I know we won't sign out on this, right? I'll say a big thank you before. You got to remember, right now, and I don't want to sound like a paranoid individual, but guess what? There's a reason why China don't let their kids on TikTok. Yeah. And there's a reason why we allow our kids on TikTok. And it's that point where, well, as long as you're okay speaking Mandarin in 30 years, lads, have at it, right? But again, it's that whole thing. It's like, it's been a joy talking to you guys. To meet a kindred spirit's always great. And the great thing about the old school martial arts that I love is, I said it back when I was probably in my 30s, but I wasn't able to have that. I got the old Hemingway gravitas now to be able to do it. You know, when you used to read the Sun newspaper and it used to be like a D-Day veteran and three like chaps, or they call them roadmen now. So that three scallywags would try and mug them. And then the paper were like, can you believe it? Sid from Southend, they tried to mug him. And like, Hitler and his mates tried to kill this guy on a beach. And you've got three guys sucking on banana vapes. And they think, what, they think they're gonna take this guy out? Yeah, good luck, because it's the last thing to go. The last thing to go is that mad old man mentality. And steered in the right direction, Archimedes, man, give me a lever and a place to lead it.
Absolutely.
I'll move the earth, man. But it's been a joy. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks, Mike, for setting this up. It's been wonderful. And mate, these are the interviews that I love. You know what I mean? When
you've got an open invitation to come on our courses, any of them.
Perfect. Trust me, I'll be down there, and don't let me do any of that jiu-jitsu. I'll just bore you. I'll start talking like John Danaher in Japanese and shit. So, but thank you so much. And it's bang on. Guys, it's been an absolute joy. Brilliant. Chris, thank you so much. Mike, thanks for doing it. Will Henshaw, as always. But hey, guys, lovely to see you all.